I will tell you what happens to a soul which is pure at her departure, and which, in her life, has had no intercourse that she could avoid with the body, and so draws after her when she dies, no taint of the body, but has shunned it, and gathered herself into herself, for such has been her constant study, that only means that she has loved wisdom rightly, and has truly practiced how to die. Is not this the practice of death? Here, the she is the soul. This is because in ancient Greek, psyche, the word for soul, is feminine and also means butterfly. Just as a caterpillar undergoes a hidden metamorphosis within its cocoon, the purified soul gathers itself into itself at death. This is a moment of deep self-reflection, of introspection, an inward folding of consciousness, where the soul withdraws from the distractions of the body and, like a shedding chrysalis, is reborn into a more refined, radiant, untainted, and transformed state of being. For Socrates, this is no farewell, but a lesson. By loving wisdom rightly and shunning bodily desires, we rehearse our own release, treating death not as annihilation, but as the soul's ultimate freedom. That very same truth flickers today in the black flame of the Gloam-Eyed Queen. Death, not as an end, but as the forge of transformation. To practice philosophy, to let reason guide us above the body's demands, is, in effect, to practice dying. Few figures embody transformation more enigmatically than the Gloam-Eyed Queen. Shrouded in mystery and absent from the lands between, her death is directly tied to the foundation of the Golden Order, Godslayer's greatsword. Sacred sword of the Gloam-Eyed Queen, who controlled the Godskin apostles before her defeat at the hands of Malekith. And mending rune of the Death Prince. The Golden Order was created by confining destined death. If the Order's very foundation relied on sealing away destined death, then the downfall of the Gloam-Eyed Queen was a defining moment. This makes her death the most significant entry point for analyzing her. Upon the defeat of the Gloam-Eyed Queen, the Golden Order was founded. But what exactly is the Golden Order? Helmed by Queen Marika, it is a system of unwavering law and order, upheld by divine principles. It bathes the lands between in honeyed rays of gold, imposing an unshakable structure upon the world. Its doctrine is rooted in the concept of an eternal, immutable God, one who does not change, does not waver, and ensures all things remain in their proper order. Or so they say. As we peel back the layers of the Golden Order, its claim to perfect, unchanging authority begins to shatter. On the road alongside Brother Corrin and Goldmask, we, like they, are drawn into a deeper doubt about the fundamentals of the Order. Goldmask, the Order's most ardent theologian, yearns for an infallible, logical truth. Yet, the revelation we uncover cuts him to the core. Radagon is Marika. It's a philosophical bombshell, for if Radagon and Marika are one and the same, then Marika can't be the immutable, eternal deity she's said to be. She changes. From a Platonic standpoint, such mutability is heresy. In Plato's world, the divine belongs to the eternal realm of forms, perfect, immutable, beyond the reach of material flux, as he insists in the Republic. Then it is impossible that God should ever be willing to change, being as is supposed, the fairest and best that is conceivable. Every God remains absolutely and forever in his own form. And in his vision for the perfect state, Plato prescribes precisely the bond the Golden Order enshrines. Philosopher kings united with the bravest warriors. And so, Glaucon, we have arrived at the conclusion that in a perfect state, wives and children are to be in common, and that all education and the pursuits of war and peace are also to be common, and the best philosophers and bravest warriors are to be their kings. Marika, Queen of the Golden Order, stands as the very embodiment of Plato's immutable form, the eternal, unchanging God, and her marriage to Godfrey enacts his blueprint for the perfect state, the aristocracy, where the best philosophers and the bravest warriors are to be their kings. The Golden Order fashions itself in aristocracy, not only in rank but in principle, echoing Plato's vision of the philosopher kings steering a just society. Yet, at its heart, it harbors a contradiction. Its supreme deity is anything but immutable. Interestingly, as we journey through the lands between, we create a microcosm of an aristocracy, the Golden Lord choosing a worthy champion and guiding the commoner, each finding their place within the order. If death is the journey to another place, and there, as men say, all dead abide, what good, O my friends and judges, can be greater than this? If indeed, when the pilgrim arrives in the world below, he is delivered from the professors of justice in this world, and finds the true judges who are said to give judgment there, Minos and Rhadamanthus and Aeacus and Triptolemus and the other sons of God who are righteous in their own life, that pilgrimage will be worth making. What would not a man give if he might converse with Orpheus, Musaeus, Hesiod, and Homer? Nay, if this be true, let me die again and again. Here, in Plato's Apology, Socrates stands before his judges. Yet, rather than begging for mercy, he recasts death as a pilgrimage, not a final punishment, but as a passage of the soul into a realm where true justice reigns. Minos and Rhadamanthus and Aeacus and Triptolemus, sons of God who dispense perfect judgment. There awaits the greatest minds of legend, Orpheus, Musaeus, Hesiod, and Homer, ready not merely to speak, but to be questioned. In framing death this way, Socrates presents death as a gateway toward a realm of forms, the divine blueprint of truth. Interestingly, Socrates imagines death as a journey to another place where all dead dwell. This realm, governed by divine reason rather than earthly corruption, would later resonate in Christian thought as the idea of heaven. Though not identical, it laid a philosophical foundation for viewing death as a return to something higher. It is this vision of the soul released into an immutable and eternal realm that becomes the blueprint for the Callipolis. In Plato's ideal city, the philosopher kings rule by wisdom, supported by the warrior guardians who enforce justice, while the commoners provide the material needs of the city, all oriented toward the immutable God as their ultimate divine principle. Marika's ceiling of destined death mirrors that very impulse, to pin eternity to a single, unchanging law, and thus found the Golden Order. The Golden Order's governance is not merely a matter of power, but a manifestation of divine reason, where order is sacrosanct and change is feared as a disruption to the eternal. Much like Plato's ideal state, born from the tragic demise of Socrates, the Golden Order finds its genesis in the death of the Gloam-Eyed Queen. In both cases, these figures leave behind little in the way of direct legacy. Instead, it is to the worlds reshaped by their death that we come to understand their true significance. In both narratives, the fall of a venerable figure marks the end of an era, a world where even the wisest, the divine, were vulnerable to the destined death that comes for all, and spawns a visionary blueprint designed to safeguard against the future death of the divine. For Plato, this blueprint was the envisioned city of the philosopher kings, the Callipolis, a city where rationality overpowered the irrational impulses of the masses. Socrates' death, then, was not simply a loss, but a catalyst for the creation of a state that would forever enshrine wisdom and reason. In a parallel, enigmatic fashion, Marika's act of excising destined death, of defeating the Gloam-Eyed Queen, laid the groundwork for an order in which the gods themselves, embodiments of divine reason, could persist eternally. In both Plato's vision and the vision of order carried by Marika, death is not an end, but a beginning. It is a passage, a seed of regeneration, and what blooms from it is not merely a new age, but a golden order itself, the very embodiment of enlightenment. Both the Gloam-Eyed Queen and Socrates' death are echoes that resonate into eternity, reverberating in systems that seek to lock death itself away. And though these systems claim to be founded on reason and order, they are haunted by the very paradoxes they hope to suppress. And so, the Gloam-Eyed Queen takes on a role akin to Socrates, a figure whose demise paved the way for an eternal order. Socrates' death spurred Plato to reimagine a state governed by immutable reason. Gloam-Eyed Queen's fall crystallized the foundation of the Golden Order. In both instances, death is not merely an end, but a genesis, a catalyst that inspires the creation of a system designed to preserve the divine against the ravages of time, against death. Just as Plato's vision sought to enshrine rationality and guard against the caprices of mortal folly, the Golden Order emerged, ensuring that the gods, symbolic of an eternal, unyielding truth, would never again succumb to mortal decay. Black Flame, a black flame incantation of the Godskin Apostles. Black Flame is weighty. After dealing damage, it continues to sap foes' HP for a very short time. Weighty. In that single word, there is a universe of meaning. It is not simply about physical heft, it is a lament of existence, a quiet nod to the burden that is death itself. The weight speaks to the gravity of coming to terms with the knowledge that one day you will die, a somber reminder that every life, regardless of its vigor, is cradled by an inescapable force. And then there is the manner in which the damage unfolds. Its slow, percent-based consumption of life. It's as if fate, in its impartial march, erodes strength gradually, ensuring that the harsh truth of mortality spares none. Each small, methodical loss is a poetic echo of the relentless approach of death, a universal equalizer that treats every being with the same measured finality. In this incantation, the very act of taking damage transforms into a metaphor. Death is an unwavering presence that touches all equally, a quiet descent that lingers, leaving behind the unmistakable whisper of our own mortality. For the Godskins, death is not an end, but the ultimate engine of transformation. Godskin noble robe made by sewing together patches of smooth skin. Subcutaneous fat makes it plump and soft, worn by the Godskin nobles, known for their 7-faced aprons. Nobles are the most ancient apostles, who are said to have assimilated in human physiology, not unlike the crucible, the Erdtree in its primordial form. The Godskins are not merely obsessed with death, they revere transformation. Their killings aren't acts of destruction for its own sake, but twisted attempts to seize the power of transformation. They believe death is the ultimate transformative force, and through it, they hope to ascend. This obsession reflects a corrupted pursuit of becoming, where transformation is taken to dangerous extremes. They are said to have assimilated in human physiology, not unlike the crucible, the Erdtree in its primordial form. But what is the crucible? Hornsent view the crucible as sacred for the refinement wrought through its evolutionary gifts, most prominently their tangled horns. By weaving inhuman physiology into their flesh, the Godskin nobles pay homage not just to the evolutionary powers of the Crucible, but to transformation itself, recognizing that death and evolution are one and the same. Just as the Hornsent revered the Crucible for its powers to refine, to purify, the nobles embrace death as the ultimate catalyst for purification. Every grafted form is a ritual of evolution, stripping away impurity to distill a purer self. In their eyes, each sacrifice of flesh is not an end, but a metamorphosis. They see themselves as a vessel of this change, but unlike true spiritual growth, their path lacks balance. Where Plato views transformation as a path towards wisdom or the soul's refinement, the Godskins pursue transformation for the sake of transformation. Their acts were in stitched flesh, wielding weapons that peel and sew, and cast an incantation of divine wrath, all point to their conviction that the power of transformation justifies all things. Noble presence. Ancient power of the Godskin nobles thrust out belly with gusto to produce a shockwave that knocks back nearby foes. Once a sign of the god's wrath, this incantation became a trophy of the nobles' god hunt. When they kill a god, they do not merely end their existence. They seize the moment of cosmic upheaval that births a new order, unleashed by the slain god. Wrath of Gold. Superior Erdtree worship incantation. This incantation was discovered when the Elden Ring was shattered, and it was feared as a sign of the Erdtree's wrath. The Gloam-Eyed Queen's fall gave rise to the Golden Order, and Marik's demise promises to herald in yet another. By harvesting this dying power, they appropriate the transformative essence of a god's death for themselves. For what can be more transformative than the death of a god and the birth of an order? Just as Socrates' martyrdom spurred Plato to conceive the ideal state born from his teacher's final act, so too did the Gloam-Eyed Queen's demise found the Golden Order. In each case, the passing of a figure, both human and divine, becomes a catalyst. From Socrates' self-sacrifice emerged a city ruled by philosopher kings who all attempt to emulate the immutable god. And from the Queen's demise emerged the Golden Order, governed by an immutable and eternal god. Both deaths, then, serve not as mere endings, but as the very seedbeds of new worlds. The black flame is not just a symbol, it is lived, it is carried. Black flame's protection. A black flame incantation of the Godskin apostles summons fire within, increasing physical damage negation. However, sacred flasks and other such forms of HP regeneration are impaired. The apostles were all embraced by the Gloam-Eyed Queen, and the black flame was their armor within. The Godskin apostles do not merely wield black flame, they embody it. Their flesh carries the fire, not as a weapon, but as a quiet acceptance of death itself. The flame was their armor within. There is something telling in that line. They're not shielded by iron or steel, but by resolve, by the weight of an idea that death is to not be feared. The boost to physical resistance shows that there is power in this acceptance, but not without a cost. Sacred flasks, the very symbol of life and healing, lose their potency. It's as if the body no longer welcomes restoration, like something in them has decided that survival is no longer the goal. The message is quiet, but clear. The impairment of the flask becomes symbolic, a subtle message. Once you've invited death into your heart, there is less reason to hold on, less urgency to keep fighting, less fear, and that absence becomes a kind of armor. But this isn't serenity. There's something off within it. The apostles weren't at peace. They were embraced by the Gloam-Eyed Queen. Their bodies turned into vessels of the black flame. It reads like a doctrine taken too far, a reverence for death that twisted into obsession, not just contentment in dying, but the need to carry death forward. Death not feared, but worn. The godskin swaddling cloth, sacred cloth of the godskin apostles, made from supple skins sewn together. Successive attacks restore HP. The Gloam-Eyed Queen cradles newborn apostles swaddled in this cloth. Soon they will grow to become the death of the gods. Here, we see the godskins practicing the philosopher's journey in reverse. For figures like Rani and Miquella, shedding one's flesh is essential to their path of enlightenment, just as Socrates explains in Phaedo. I will tell you what happens to a soul which is pure at her departure, and which, in her life, has had no intercourse that she could avoid with the body, and so draws after her when she dies, no taint of the body, but has shunned it, and gathered herself into herself, for such has been her constant study, that only means that she has loved wisdom rightly, and has truly practiced how to die. Is not this the practice of death? Socrates insists that a true philosopher practices dying by stripping away bodily attachments, so the soul can ascend to the realm of forms untainted. Likewise, Rani deliberately renounces her physical body to find her own path of enlightenment, the dark path of the Empyrean. And Miquella undergoes self-sacrifice in hopes of revealing a higher truth, his circlet of light, his Elden ring. The godskins, by contrast, never cast off their mortal frame. They are wrapped in godskin from birth and draw power from divine death rather than release of their own flesh. Instead of ascending toward the heavens, they plunge ever deeper into the material transformation, inverting the Platonic ideal at every step. In Plato's view, the philosophers gradually shed fleshly attachment so that when death finally comes, the soul ascends unencumbered to the forms. A newly born philosopher is metaphorically swaddled in basic teachings only to strip those wrappings away over their lifetime, fasting, dialectic, contemplation, so that at the moment of separation, the soul is already free. For a Platonic aspirant, each layer of flesh is something to be relinquished, not adorned. The godskin swaddling cloth subverts this entire process. From their first instant of life, each apostle is wrapped in stitched together godskin. In place of shedding their own flesh to purify the soul, they are bedecked with divine skin, learning instead to draw power from the death of the gods. Whereas Plato insists on a progressive lightening of the body until the soul ascends to the heavens. The cloth fastens the apostle's identity to material transformation from birth. There is no final release, only a perpetual binding to divine skin. Their endpoint, therefore, is not a higher purpose or the vision of divine reason, it is transformation itself. The Platonic goal of reaching the divine realm becomes for them a bottomless hunger for ever greater transformation. This mirrors how they revere the crucible, not as a means towards external ideal, but as the end in itself. The Spira describes the normalized crucible current's purpose poetically. The Spira is a normalized crucible current that one day will form a column that stretches to the gods. In that vision, the spiral signifies a journey with an endpoint, the gods, or more broadly, a higher purpose, a reason to live. The godskins, however, fixate on the crucible's constant flux, a cycle of becoming with no summit. They honor its transformative power as though the crucible were a deity in its own right, never pausing to point toward a higher principle. This inversion is even etched into the Godslayer's greatsword. Its blade forms an incomplete spiral. Each curve leads to another, but never converges to a point. Where the Spira's normalized spiral arcs upward to a point, the Godslayer's spiral winds indefinitely, evading any apex. There is no advancement toward enlightenment. Instead, they are thrust into an unending cycle of transformation. The Gloam-Eyed Queen's parallels to Socrates doesn't end with her death. In a quiet and easily missed moment during our journey through Rykard's Manor, we come across one of her followers standing before a winged serpent. There is no dialogue, no explanation, just silence, and reverence. Its meaning deepens when we place it alongside Socrates' final request to Crito. Crito, we owe a rooster to Asclepius. Will you remember to pay the debt? Asclepius, the god of healing, symbolized by the serpent. This was a ritual act. The rooster was sacrificed not in fear, but in gratitude for a healing already received. And of course, we can see the same message of death being a form of healing with the serpent god of Mount Gelmir. Serpent god's curved sword. Curved sword fashioned in the image of an ancient serpent deity and tool of a forgotten religion practiced on Mount Gelmir. Formerly used to offer up sacrifices, this sword restores HP upon slaying an enemy. The serpentine form and sacrificial history of this blade directly mirror the winged serpent's ancient role as a divine healer. In the cult of Mount Gelmir, each enemy slain becomes an offering to the serpent god, converting death into vitality. This is the ritual of dedicating a rooster to Asclepius, the serpent-associated god of healing. The sacrifice itself was understood as a conduit for restoration, just as Socrates' final offering to Asclepius symbolized a cure through death, a path of refinement and purification. Interestingly, the winged serpent emblem seen in many medical logos is actually the caduceus of Hermes, two snakes and wings, whereas the true symbol of healing is the rod of Asclepius, a single serpent entwined on a staff. So the winged serpent healing symbolism actually traces back to Asclepius' single serpent of medicine, born from an old mix-up with the caduceus. Socrates viewed death not as a sickness, but as a cure. The soul, released from the body, would ascend toward divine reason. And here we see a similar image, a follower of the Gloam-Eyed Queen before a winged serpent, a symbol not of corruption, but of transcendence. The parallel is striking. Just as Crito is tasked with fulfilling a sacred vow to a serpent healing god, this follower appears to fulfill a vow to a queen who embraced death, destined death. Both moments point to the same idea, that death, when rightly understood, is not the end, but the beginning of a new order. The rooster is owed not in despair, but in acknowledgement that something greater begins at the end. Interestingly, the rooster is symbolic of dawn itself, the herald of rebirth, of a new day and a fresh chance, a grand moment of transformation and renewal. The rooster's call, marking an end of the darkness and the birth of a new order. In the same way, when we fall in battle and the screen fades to black, we don't remain lost. We respawn at first light. Each death isn't a final failed state, but a promise of renewal. The dawn resets the world and offers new choices and challenges you to rise again, reborn by the light. Just as death closes one chapter, the rooster's crow reminds us that every ending ushers in a new beginning. While the black flame offers a cold and measured death, a spiritual transition, the other great fire, the flame of ruin, burns without purpose or limit. To understand how these competing flames reflect different aspects of transformation, we must turn to the one who stood between them and ultimately fell, Ammon, the first traitor among the fire monks. Black flame monk Ammon ashes. Ammon swore fealty to the god-slain black flame, and so became the first fire monk to turn traitor. Or perhaps it is better said that he fled from the giant's flame out of cowardice. The tale of Ammon, the first fire monk to betray his order, reveals a deeper tension within Elden Ring's cosmology, one that speaks to Plato's tripartite soul and the peril of transformation untempered by reason. Ammon swore fealty to the god-slain black flame, abandoning the giant's flame, and by extension, the sacred trust of his monastic order. To understand this, we must consider the role of the fire monks within the Golden Order structure. O flame. The giant's flame still smolders upon the distant northern mountain top, and the fire monks are its guardians. Tasked with guarding the flame of ruin, a primal, insatiable force, they serve as stewards of controlled ruin. The incantation, Whirl of Flame, offers insight into their burden. Fire beguiles those who gaze into it, and so the guardians of the flame are also its worshippers. This line captures the fire monk's paradox. They were called to guard the flame, to control its destructive and transformative potential, yet could never fully separate themselves from its allure. Like desire in Plato's soul, the fire is supposed to be kept in check by reason, with spirit as its ally. But unchecked fire, like desire, consumes. In this light, the fire giant, as the avatar of the fell god, becomes a symbol of pure tyrannical desire, an elemental will to burn that threatens to devour all unless restrained. This collapse of restraint is embodied in the fire giant's very form. Most striking is the face of the fell god, with a single eye embedded into his chest and a gaping maw opened in his stomach. In Platonic thought, the eye is the gateway to the soul, the instrument through which reason perceives truth. But here, the eye is not on the head, the seat of reason. This design literalizes the image of a soul ruled by base desire. The giant does not see with thought, he hungers with vision, led not by reason, but by desire. His perception is directed entirely by his appetite, making him a metaphor for a soul governed by the lowest part of itself. That the eye is singular only deepens the symbol. Monocular vision implies obsession, a lack of depth, no counterbalance or dialogue, just one consuming will. The sacrifice of his leg further reinforces this imbalance. The leg, a symbol of groundedness, direction, what gives us balance, is gone, leaving him lurching, unable to walk his own path. He has sacrificed the very structure that allows movement, choice, balance, and now crawls forward as a servant of fire. No longer a guardian of desire, he is its thrall. Where the fire monks waver between discipline and temptation, the fire giant has fully surrendered. He is not merely consumed by desire, he is formed by it. Every feature of his body declares it. He is the soul ruled by appetite alone, a tyrant of fire, burning not with purpose, but with the blind will to consume. Amon's flight suggests he feared not only the flame, but himself. His defection to the black flame, associated with death and the soul's release from the body, may be read as a desperate attempt to escape the vulnerability of desire. In this, Amon is not simply a traitor, but a tragic figure, one who fled the body's temptations by turning to death as purification. Thus, Amon becomes a case study in the dangers of imbalanced transformation. If the fell god represents desire unchained, and the fire monk stand as the spirit tasked with obedience, then Marika, whose command sealed the flame of ruin, embodies reason restraining both. In Plato's vision of the soul, reason must govern, spirit enforces its will, and appetite is to be held in check.
Hark, brave warriors. Hark, my lord Godfrey. We commend your deeds. Guidance hath delivered ye through each ordeal to the place ye stand. Put the giants to the sword and confine the flame atop the mount. Let a new epoch begin, an epoch glistening with life.
The same structure underpins his ideal city, where philosopher kings rule, warriors defend, and producers labor. Amon's abandonment of the flame of ruin and embrace of the black flame shows what happens when reason abdicates. Spirit, though dutiful, becomes zealots of destruction. An appetite, freed from all bounds, burns the very order it was born to serve. Just as a city or soul surrendered to desire alone collapses into tyranny and chaos. Interestingly, Amon's story parallels Mesmer's. Both were chosen by fire, yet sought purification by turning away from it. Amon fled the flame of ruin to the black flame, a path tied to death and the soul's release, while Mesmer ultimately surrenders to the base serpent, Mesmer's orb. Mesmer despised his own fire. Time and time again he hoped to rid himself of it, but ever did it burn. Against that backdrop stands the winged serpent, a token creature of Mesmer's military forces and a wise friend that keeps the base serpent at bay, holding its power in check. Winged Serpent Helm. The winged serpent is the token creature of Mesmer's military forces. It is a wise friend which keeps the base serpent at bay and holds its power in check. The base serpent embodies our vilest, most earthbound instincts, the lowest part of our nature, while the winged serpent represents the soul's aspiration to transcend them. Mesmer's abandonment by America leaves him as prey to his own inner hunger, the base serpent. Stripped of the light that gave guidance to his flame, he can no longer channel it with reason. When he removes the fleeting simulacra that is the iris of grace, the base serpent is unleashed, devouring the very fire it is derived from in a destructive, self-consuming cycle. When the flame they received from Mesmer would not find purchase within them, the Fire Knights relied on fire incantations to honor their bond. In that single line, we witness how his flame quite literally refuses to flourish in another's hands. No mere heirloom or borrowed spark, it is born of Mesmer's own living ember. And when that ember flickers without its guiding light, the serpent gnaws at its core, a dark thing feasting upon the very tinder that sustains it. In its ravenous hunger, it consumes its own source, a vicious cycle of flame and fang. The base serpent devours the fire that gave it birth.
Those stripped of the grace of gold shall all meet death in the embrace of Mesmer's flame. I will not suffer. A lord devoid of light, wilt thou be taken in the jaws of the abyssal serpent, shorn of light.
This is more than a threat. It is his own confession. Mesmer is the one stripped of gold. America's abandonment symbolized that loss, his first stripping of gold. He then cast away his iris of grace. He is stripped of gold. He is shorn of light. His own flame will consume him. He will meet his death, and he knows it.
Those stripped of the grace of gold shall all meet death. In the embrace of Mesmer's flame.
Without a guiding light, whether a clear goal, steady purpose, or sound judgment, our deepest passions can run wild, turn into a blaze that will consume us. For Mesmer, the flame is a choice, a reflection of what lies coiled within. Will it take the shape of the winged serpent, a wise guardian that restrains the base hunger? Or will it fall into the jaws of the base serpent, unbound, unreasoning, and self-consuming? When guidance is lost and reason is severed, the fire turns inward and the serpent devours its own heart. This is more than a story of magic and crusade. It is a parable of how desire, when left unchecked, becomes our own undoing. Just as Mesmer's flame devours itself, the flame of ruin is a self-consuming fire. Brilliant and alluring at first, but destined to turn on its wielder. Amon's flight from the flame of ruin is not mere cowardice. It is the clearest testament to the terror of being consumed by one's own hunger. In fleeing, he shows what we all must face. Do we master our desires, or will they master and ultimately devour us? In the end, our greatest test isn't to extinguish the fire of our desires, but to master them. Face the fire within, guide it with wisdom and restraint, and never abandon it. Let Amon and Mesmer remind us that fleeing from the flames leads only to tragedy. True strength lies in standing firm, embracing our inner fire, and forging it into a force for growth. Only then can our passions become the spark that lights our purpose instead of a blaze that consumes us. Ultimately, both Socrates and the Gloam-Eyed Queen remind us that death isn't an adversary, but a threshold, one that when faced honestly and with balance, can teach us how to live. To have loved wisdom rightly in life, to have practiced philosophy, is to rehearse dying. By cultivating detachment from the desires of the body now, we train our soul for the final parting. Just as Socrates describes when he insists that one who has truly practiced how to die is already free of bodily taint at death. Don't fear death, but don't seek it. Don't shun desire, but don't let it consume you. When we practice death, when we learn to let reason guide us above appetite, we learn to keep our bodily impulses in check, not by extinguishing them, but by subordinating them to a higher purpose. In doing so, we avoid chasing fleeting pleasure or clinging desperately to our mortal frame, and instead cultivate wisdom, courage, and self-mastery.